Welcome back to First Year Presidents. I'm your host, Jason Cadigan. I'm here with April Mills of Engine for Change. And today's episode is brought to you by Internal Business Intelligence from Cold Star Technologies. This is the secret weapon for new presidents who want real control over the business and executive team that they just inherited. So if you want to find out more about that, go to coldstartech.com/IBI. All the info will be there. April, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Jason.
You bet. So I wanted to have you on because you worked at Intel. You have a lot of experience with managing change. And we had a long conversation. And I was like, oh my gosh, we have to record something here to share your voice, right? Because you have all this experience and you've seen stuff that I've seen. Tell me what your view is on, like, especially because I would hope that new presidents are listening to this show and trying to find like blind spots and areas they can improve in that. If there was one thing you could download directly into every new president's head, what would that be?
The first thing I would tell them is, as you're going around and doing your typical 30, 60, 90-day planning and looking at the organization, right? Many people fly around if they have multiple sites, meet places. The thing to look for that you probably haven't been looking for yet is your change agents. And let me define that term.
Mm-hmm.
The change agents are the people who are choosing to create change around them, whether they've been asked to or not. They're the people who are watching out for your operations, who are usually pushing the limits of the status quo in service to the mission, well beyond the boundaries of their jobs. And those are the hidden resources of capturable energy that are so vital for a new president to find, support, amplify, connect. It can be like finding a hidden nuclear reactor you can use to power up your organization.
Okay. So this can be very distracting. I'm on LinkedIn connecting with people all the time, and I saw a woman who had just become new president of the North American operation, and she was so happy and whatnot. And the very next post was, okay, they flew me to Germany, right? And I'm meeting everyone at the European head office. And like you said, this could be very distracting. So how can new presidents put some of that sort of eye of Sauron attention back onto their own organization and the people there? Isn't it easy to go, well, I have an executive team and I've inherited them and they know everybody, and can't I just sort of delegate and let that run itself?
Yeah, I would say don't do that. Please don't do that. When a new leader comes in, people are looking up to you to set the tone. And if the first tone you set is one of being absent, then the message they'll get is, I'm on my own. And then when you turn around with your 30, 60, 90-day plan and want them on board, they'll yawn and say, oh, you're back. This is a major change that's happened in organizations. It used to be leaders were grown from inside of organizations. And now so often leaders parachute into organizations. And I started my career as a nuclear engineer. So sometimes I like to use the term half-life. And the half-life of a leader in organizations is shrinking, right? If the organization replaces the chief information officer every 18 months, and I'm an employee, what do I care what your 30, 60, 90-day plan is? You'll be gone. I've been here 25 years. So it's important if you're a new leader, especially if you're going into a new organization, to connect with and understand those people that you're leading and what help they need to make positive change happen.
That's a great reminder, April. Like I think the tendency is to get in, look at the spreadsheets, look at the metrics, look at the KPIs and go, okay, where's the market segment where we can do the most damage, right? And get in there and drive that revenue. And you're saying, don't forget about the human element, because people actually have to go out there and accomplish these things. And if they don't feel a connection with you, your mission, culture, your vision, what you want to accomplish here, they're just not going to do it. And so...
Right.
And I think this is a major disconnect as well that I've seen. I'll add my voice to yours. It's not it's not a surprise that that's the answer. How can we remind presidents that they should be looking at the human factor first, right? That this is the most important thing. I mean, they come in with a vision. I would hope they didn't just come in for the paycheck or the promise of a huge bonus. based on some kind of magical performance. But they get in there and I think maybe they get swept away. There's like a river or a tide, some kind of current that says, okay, you're responsible now for the revenue generation. Maybe they're shareholders of this business and that. How do we keep their head away from those distractions?
Yeah. Well, so I use this framework where I talk to people about what you can outsource, what you shouldn't outsource, and what you can't. And I'll use real life examples first to start. So you can outsource mowing the lawn, cleaning the toilet. The toilet doesn't say, but Saturday mornings are our special time together, right? It doesn't know who cleaned it.
Hmm.
You shouldn't outsource hugging your spouse, calling your mother. Somebody else could do it, but then they've got the relationship and you don't. And you can't outsource your sit-ups. No
Hmm.
matter how many times I've tried to get somebody on those
Right.
videos I watch online doing sit-ups to make my abs better. If I don't do it, my abs don't get better. And I think it's the same thing with leaders. You can get support for logistics and operations, but you can't outsource, or you shouldn't outsource leading your team. If you're not present, someone else's voice is in their ear and example is guiding them. And you cannot outsource what I call change agency, which
Hmm.
is that showing up in front of people, clearing the obstacles for them to help them move forward into your vision. If you're not doing that, you're not strong enough for the change you're trying to lead, and your people are hurting. So that's where I tie vision and this being with the people together. Is you cannot outsource change agency. You have to do it with your people.
Hmm. Okay. Now I'm going to do some therapy on myself here. I think,
Okay.
early in my career. So if we went back to
Yep.
Jason in his
Yep.
20s, right? I was a plant
Yep.
manager at 25 and that. And then after that, I started getting into larger companies and I don't know. I've got a big brain and it would see things in other parts of the organization and send me over there and then people would get upset. You know, you're in operations. What are you doing in accounting? Well, I
Mhm.
found stuff over here that we need to look at. And I would
Yep.
find myself ejected from the organization pretty quickly. And
Yeah.
that was frustrating, right? You know,
Yep.
it's like, hey, I've covered my bases. It wasn't like I wasn't doing my own job, right?
Right. Right.
But now I'm over here and it's offending other people and their feathers are getting ruffled, right? You know, who is this
Yep.
guy looking over there? And then the bosses would go, "Oh, well, this isn't going to work out, you know. You're too
Yep.
independent." Where is that balance there? And how does a president who is again pulled in suddenly by this current and pulled along and I like they're all I'm living for other people now. I don't have any time. How are they supposed to find time to sit down with and get to know a little bit about the humans who are working for them, right? Should they go to their department heads and ask them who are the biggest troublemakers or what?
Yeah.
Based on what I just dumped on your
Yeah.
lap there,
Yep.
can you give me kind of a framework of like how you would direct a new president to deal with this?
Yeah. Well, the hidden secret that anybody can access even today was cataloged by John Kotter in his book Accelerate. And years ago, 2010, Kotter came to see me. I was running a guiding coalition based on his model at the shipyard in Bremerton, Washington. And he was struck by how we were creating positive change using the entire workforce and this small cohort of volunteers.
Hmm.
And the leader of that effort in the shipyard was a then Navy captain, now retired Admiral Mark Whitney. And he would come to 1 hour of a meeting every 2 weeks where this guiding coalition of passionate people were collected, working on actively delivering strategic initiatives. And he said it was the best part of his job, that 1 hour. Because even though it was 1 hour every 2 weeks, he got to connect with people who were as passionate as he was of creating the future he was leading towards
Hmm.
and just bask in all of the accomplishments. And it
Yeah.
would energize him.
Hmm.
And then he'd go off and face all those currents and challenges that come up in a senior leader's time. But he had this 1 hour of respite where the hope and belief and confidence were stacking up. And Kotter came to see us because we were one of the best implementations of his model he could find. We had 70 plus large strategic wins over just a few years. And we were churning out leaders. Whitney called it a leadership incubator.
Mm-hmm.
So there are known systems and processes, but they're really hidden. Kotter put out the book Accelerate in 2016, and very few people have even heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking
Yeah.
as a new president to find a strategic differentiator,
Hmm.
check that out. Call me. It's pretty amazing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, my next question was, okay, April, do you help people organize these kinds of things? And that wasn't a layup. Like, I didn't know that this was where we were going to go.
Well, yeah,
So,
you asked the question,
yeah,
so I'm just
yeah.
offering the solution.
Right. Right. Okay. So who is going to organize this kind of group? And then you've got to pick the people, right? And remember, like I said, like the tendency of organizations is go in packs, have a group of people who rise together and they'll pull you along, right? I just didn't understand that, and I wish I could go back in time and do it again. How do you deal with that contradiction in building that group and go, well, wait, this is not necessarily a troublemaker. This is somebody who is like a workhorse that we should harness to get to go in a direction that we can control, that we would like a little bit better. Like there's still, I would give a lot of freedom to that group to identify, select its own problems to hunt down and destroy. Right? But yeah, how do you get started on something like that, and who should be responsible for organizing it?
Well, the simplest thing for a senior leader to do would just be to say, I read Kotter's book, Accelerate. I've talked with somebody who implemented this. Here's the results they got. I think a group like this would be powerful in our organization. Who wants to join me in creating it? And you see who raises their hand, and you send it to everybody. You don't send it to the senior leaders and say, who on your staff? You don't do all of this like praise down or connect down. You send it to everybody. The first time we sent an email like that out to 10,000 people in the naval shipyard.
Yikes.
We got 300 people who volunteered, but we only needed 50 to start. Right? So if you're in an organization of 1,000, if you send an email like that, you're going to get 5 responses, and you start with those 5, and then you teach them how to, what I call drive change, not people, because chances are good, Jason, when you went in to other people's organizations, you said, I see a better way, and you should do my better way, which is why
I wasn't co-creating at all.
Right, you weren't co-creating.
I've become much nicer the older I've gotten.
Well, and it's a fundamentally different approach. When you go in instead and say, I'm passionate enough to try something. Here's what I'm willing to do. Would you like to join me? I call that driving change, choosing the change for yourself, clearing the obstacles for others to join you. The core of this sort of group is we drive change, not people, which means you don't get to use my leadership authority and tell people the boss sent me to fix you. You get to go in and say, the boss and I care about this. Would you like to join us in getting this done? And people should let that part sink in. That's so different. And it's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, April, that if you can get their involvement, how many CRM or other software implementations have we seen fail? Because the end users were not asked, were not involved, were not requested to, like, what functions do you use the most? What would you like to see about this thing? And so there's no champion, there's no internal champion on the ground for implementing this thing. And I can see it here. Yeah, I think it took till my 30s before it started to sink in that I couldn't just dictate like Zeus from Mount Olympus and get them to do things. They didn't like it. And frankly, the solutions were better the more people who I involved and became cheerleaders for it, because they were the ones who were touching the thing every day and experiencing the problems and that. And they, listen, new presidents, these people will hide things from you out of not vindictiveness, but frustration. I'm not going to tell him. I'm not going to tell her about, these spools of wire here or something like that. We could fix this easily. I'm not going to tell them that. But if you came and asked, humbly, right? Okay. Well, my next question is, okay, so let's say you've done this, you've got this group. Is there a minimum size of organization that's required to use something like this?
No. The nice part about it, all of these models and methods. So Kotter's method, if you read his book, he talks about it from that, senior executive, large organization level. And because he does that, and because I knew how powerful this was, that's why I wrote my books, Everyone is a Change Agent and Change Tactics, because those meet people at the other end, at the N of one, if we would say that, and right, the sample size of one. What can I do from where I'm at with what I have?
Okay.
And so you can start all of this. Anybody can. Obviously, if you're a president, you've got a platform, but I've seen a junior engineer change their software team. I've seen a director change their part of the organization. And I've seen senior leaders make amazing things happen that drew the attention of world experts because they couldn't find it anywhere else.
Okay. Which leads me to my last question then, or I guess second to last. What resources does something like this require? What is a president going to expect to commit? Not just the salary time, right, of the hours put into it, but what other stuff do they need?
Well, if you want to do it yourself, my first book is $10. So if you've got $10, you can get started.
Yeah.
The introduction to my second book, which is $14, $15, I think, points out though the story, which is most people don't read books. Of the people who read books, most of them don't implement them. Right. So I think that the numbers that Ellie Goldratt of Theory of Constraints fame quoted to my good friend was 1 in 10,000 people will read the book, and 1 in 10,000 of the people who read the book will realize they could just implement it themselves. So for those folks who want help, then it's the sliding scale of how much help. A call every now and then, somebody sitting right next to you every day. You could go all the way up to somebody right there next to you all the time. I don't think you need that. The first step to take is spend $10 in 2 hours and then go from there.
Actually read it. In the organization, are they going to need anything else off the bat?
No. I mean, if you were a senior leader and you read about the method, wanted to do it, sent the email, you'd start this. It taps into what I call the discretionary energy in your employees. So I use this analogy. We treat most organizations like they're coal power plants. You shovel in people, you burn them up, and you try and get what power you can out of that. And we know coal plants are very inefficient, and using employees like coal is also very inefficient. The alternative is to think about your organization like a hydroelectric system. People show up every day with the potential energy to contribute great things. Do your systems allow them to do that? Or do they, to your point about the person hiding the wire or not bringing it up, does their energy spark out in indifference or frustration? And what these methods and strategies do is help you find the people who have the most potential energy, although everyone has some, and funnel that to get your turbine turning that's producing power to fuel your vision, to power your vision. So it's a mindset shift and a habit shift, but it can happen instantaneously. Again, $10 in 2 hours, you can change the rest of your career.
Right. So yeah, first place to go, I guess, Amazon.
Yep, Amazon. If you put the April K, if you put the K in, April K Mills, I'll come up. Everyone is a Change Agent, and audiobooks there, paperback, ebook, easy to find.
Right.
But that's the first step. In effect, go back to the sit-ups piece. If you're not willing to get on the floor and do a few crunches, nothing's changing. So start there. And
right. And if people do want to connect to you, where's the best place? Website or LinkedIn?
Yeah, they could get me on LinkedIn. Again, April K Mills. I'll come up there. engine-for-change.com is my website. April@engine-for-change.com is my email. Find me, connect with me. You've got amazing things you want to do. There's better ways to get it done.
Right. Wonderful. All right. Well, today's conversation was sponsored by Internal Business Intelligence from Cold Start Technologies. IBI is something that you can't get anywhere else. These are real insights and people working on your side, company presidents, as opposed to just assessments and reports, which many other consulting companies will give you and then run away. So check out coldstartech.com/IBI for details. April Mills, appreciate you. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Jason. Really good to be here.